Hi, friends. Welcome to the Mobile Bev Pros podcast, a podcast dedicated to providing mobile bar and event professionals with the information they need to succeed. I'm your host, business coach, and founder of the Mobile Bar Academy, Sarah Murphy. In each episode, the Mobile Bev Pros team will bring you industry experts, information, anecdotes, and opinions with the goal of assisting you in building a profitable, sustainable, and successful business that supports you in creating wealth. I'm excited to share with you today's episode, so let's get started.
Today on the podcast, we are chatting anniversaries. This week, this month, we are celebrating the 5th year anniversary of the Mobile Bar Academy, but we are also celebrating how many years of mobile bar excellence through Mobile Bev Pros?
Well, the podcast has been around for 6 years, which would have put us in 2018, but the Facebook group has been around since September of 2017. So we've got a lot of different, it's like when you started dating and when you got married, like there's a lot of different anniversaries going on here. But this week, we're specifically celebrating the 5-year of the Mobile Bar Academy. And at the end of this week, we have a really fantastic and special promotion that we're going to be running, but you'll hear more of that if you're part of our newsletter or our email. Obviously, we'll have information there, and we'll also have it on our socials. We'll post it in the Facebook group. We'll have it all the places so that people can take advantage of it. But today on the podcast, I'm most excited to just kind of look back a little bit. It's been quite the journey since this little project started in 2017. And it's been life-changing, to say the least.
Yeah, so you got started obviously as a mobile bar owner, very successful in the Nashville, Tennessee area. And then you started Mobile Bev Pros. Can you tell us a little bit about why you started Mobile Bev Pros? What drove you to begin the community? How did it start and become the Goliath that it is today?
Yeah, you had mentioned in the past that I've not ever really formally shared my origin story as to how Mobile Bev Pros came to be. And I think those who've been around for a while maybe have heard me tell this story either in an office hours or maybe at one of our in-person events. But I started my mobile bar from a place of desperation, if I'm going to be honest. I was a senior manager in tech, and it was my first position away from the hospitality industry. So I had worked in hotels and restaurants, on dude ranches, you name it. If it was in the hospitality industry, I had been there, done that, including getting my master's degree from the Cornell Hotel School, which is the top hospitality school in the world. So I thought I was going to live and die in the hospitality and service industry. And my first job outside of that industry, which I obtained because I had just had our first child, and I was seeking a better work-life balance. And anyone who's worked in restaurants knows that like it's just grueling hours, and trying to find a daycare that would accept my weird working hours was really challenging. And so I didn't see a whole lot of options. And my husband and I were living in DC at the time, and childcare was more than our mortgage by a lot. And that was, just the standard run of the mill childcare. And so we really had this pivotal moment where we were like, how are we going to afford to have a family in this life? And he was from the South. We kind of took a look at what the options were, and we figured that going to Middle Tennessee or the Nashville area would be a good opportunity for us. And so I got this job in tech and worked there for like 3 years, felt really good about it. It was a great 6-figure paying job, went on maternity leave for my second. And it was the first time I felt like I had really paid it. It just sounds strange, but like I had a good solid job that wasn't in the hospitality industry. I had vacation. I was making 6 figures. I was managing a team of 50 engineers, which I had no idea what they did, but like leadership was my gig. And on maternity leave, I really struggled with postpartum anxiety. And I really just wanted to be back at work. I wanted to be somewhere where I understood what was going on, because having a toddler and a baby at home like was really challenging. And anyone who's been listening and who's gone through postpartum of any sort will understand, like, you just feel like a total failure all the time. And I wanted to go back and be and do something I'm really good at. So I reached out to my manager at the time, and I said, I would like to come back early. It was 8 weeks after I had her, and we had arranged to have a nanny when I went back to work. So we had arranged all the things. He invited me to coffee instead of to the office to talk about all of those things, coming back to the office and taking back over those responsibilities. And in that meeting, he shared with me that they no longer had a need for me and that they were downsizing the company and that there would be a small severance and that he wishes me the best. I literally left from that coffee meeting to go on a weekend trip in the mountains of Virginia. And the whole way there, I just cried. I had no idea. I was the breadwinner. I now only had a couple of months to figure out how to go and do something else, find another job with a new baby, with a nanny that, was going to start. And above all else, I felt like I didn't ever want to be at the whim of another person as to whether or not I could feed my family. And so during that severance, the period of severance that I had remaining in that year, I must have started like 3 or 4 businesses. I look back on like some of the things that I did. I started working on Upwork as a consultant, like a management leadership consultant, and I got exactly one paying client who will haunt my dreams forever. He essentially ran a dating platform that was just so sketch. And so I was like, this sucks. I'm not doing this any longer. So then I started creating courses and doing like educational content for people who wanted to Airbnb. And I also started doing a lot of public speaking around tiny houses and advocacy work there. All of those things were great, but they weren't paying the bills. As anyone who's tried to start a business knows, like it takes a while to ramp. And I realized I wasn't going to be able to ramp in the very few amount of months that I had severance for. So I had to actually start applying to real things. And so I did. I used a recruiter. I applied to all of the things. And ultimately, I ended up with a senior leadership position at Postmates. And it wasn't making nearly as much money as I was before, but it was something and it had benefits and it had all of those things. And so I said, okay, this will keep us afloat while I decide what I want to do. And so my severance was up in December and my job at Postmates started in early February. And in December, I saw a mobile bar in Australia, which was like, okay, this is amazing. How do they do it? I did all the research and I realized that this was something that I could do. It's hospitality focused. I already had the restaurant experience, the events industry experience. I had everything that I needed in order to figure out how to do this. Every other business idea I'd run past my husband to this point, he had basically been like, I will support you in anything you want to do, honey. And then he saw one failure after the other failure after the other failure. And I say failure with, a little bit of grace in the fact that like, it wasn't necessarily a failure, but I didn't really give them, they didn't really have wings, if you know what I'm saying. So I created a website for this business, the whole thing. I called it Bar Magnolia. It was just like a working name. It wasn't attached to that being the name. It was just, I've tried to think about what some of my favorite things about the South were. And what came to mind was this giant magnolia tree in my husband's mom's backyard. It was like the first thing about the South that I really fell in love with was these magnolia trees. When I looked them up, they were ancient, like they'd been around from prehistoric ages and they still thrived. And I'm like, that resiliency, I need more of that in my life. And so I just kind of used that name as like a placeholder. And we had put both the girls to bed and we climbed in bed and I said, can I show you something? And he's like, sure. And I showed him the website and he looked at me and he goes, this could work. And I was like, what? What? He's like, I think this is a great idea. I was like mind blown because everything else, he would support me, but it was kind of like a you do you type thing. And with this, he's like, I can see us doing this. Like he was a part of it. He had bought in. And so we set up the whole business. We did the LLC, all of that, December 2016. And we did a soft launch at a wedding show in January of 2017. And that was like our soft launch. We're like, if people are interested, if we get good response at this wedding show, then we'll know that it has legs. And we did. We had a great response. So many things we did wrong in that one wedding show. You learn things as you go. But we really decided at that point to go all in. And then I started my job at Postmates and I worked Postmates for 18 months alongside Bar Magnolia. And 18 months in, I had to make a decision because I couldn't keep juggling all the balls with my young family. It was either go all in on Bar Magnolia or we would have to like shut her down or sell her. And so John gave me 3 months. He's like, go ahead and leave Postmates. You have 3 months to make a go of it. And if you can't at least pay yourself by the end of those 3 months, then you'll have to look for another job. And the rest is history because it was right around that time that I started the Facebook group. And I told myself, like, if I am going to get the most out of these 3 months, I need to surround myself with people that can help me fast track my success, people I can learn from, and people who can learn from me. And so we started the little Facebook group. It's called the Founders Group. You might be able to still find it. I've paused it. I haven't archived it. It's still around. And it was just like 30 people originally. I just reached out to a bunch of people from all over the world on Instagram and was like, hey, would you be interested in like a little Facebook group? And there weren't that many of us at the time. A lot of people didn't join or said no, thank you. And some people did. But it was very much a very exclusive vibe. It was invite only. And so the more people that were in there, they'd invite other people. And then people started to get annoyed that there were so many people in there now. And I did kind of the risky thing. And I made the managerial decision that we were going to start another one and it was going to be open to everybody. Now we have like over 5,000 members in that Facebook group, but that was the origin story of Mobile Bev Pros. I didn't even know how to start a Facebook group. I had a social media person I was paying at the time for Bar Magnolia. And I was like, could you start a group on Facebook? And she's like, yeah, what do you want it to be for? And what do you want to call it? And I said, Mobile Bev Pros. And she goes, Bev? And I said, yeah, Bev. And she goes, why not bar? And I said, well, because I don't want to exclude people who have like coffee carts and lemonade stands. Like we aren't necessarily just for bars. And she's like, okay, that's kind of a weird name though. And it is, I'm not gonna lie, it is kind of a weird name all these years later. But that was the beginning of it. And then as we started trying to provide more value to each other in the Facebook group, we started answering a lot of the same questions over and over again. And we still, to some extent, do that in the Facebook group. But I realized that if we had one place where all of the answers lived, that would be a whole lot easier. And so I looked into what it would cost to start a membership. Back then it was a lot harder. I know this is crazy, but now there's so many options for like online courses that cost you like $19 a month. But back then that was not the case. There wasn't as much software. There wasn't as much out of the box stuff. So we had to custom build. We had to hire someone to custom build the website with the ability to host all of the things because we wanted videos and also documents like swipe files and a whole bunch of other requests. And I didn't have the money for it. It was like a 5-figure project. And so I pre-sold. I was actually just sharing these numbers with you the other day. I pre-sold memberships to the Academy for like $39 a month. And that pre-launch provided almost to the 100 money to pay for the project. And so it kind of paid for itself, the original iteration of it. And then we've just continued to refine it as time has gone on at, suggestions on what it could include, feedback as to what people wish it had. And we've had lots of industry experts come in there and record stuff for it. We added on the office hours. And yeah, so I feel like what's important for people to know about the Mobile Bar Academy is that it is tried and true in the fact that we've had so many people come through there and so much feedback on what's in there that like anything people didn't value, we took out, and anything people thought it was lacking, we put in. And so it's been a real community effort to hone the information that's in there so that it provides the most amount of value and the most amount of impact in relation to what people are investing, both time and money, right? Because we know people are really like limited on time when they get in there. And so we don't want to have a whole bunch of fluff that people don't find valuable. And yeah, so that's kind of how the Academy came to be. And then throughout the experience, we've had live events or we've done challenges on topics. At one point, shortly after COVID, we gave everybody 2 months free of the Academy. And then we focused all of the content that we were putting into the Academy on pivoting your business to survive COVID. And I feel like there are a lot of people out there who create courses or they create programs and it's like one and done. And anyone who's been a part of the Academy knows we kind of reinvent it every year based on feedback. We try and improve it, but also we try and stay relevant. And so after COVID, pivoting was the main topic. Right now, what you've heard a lot of on this podcast and what you've seen in our programs, such as Nashville, is that we're really trying to focus on how to take the mobile bar industry to that next level. So it's no longer just here's your honeybook proposal and here's a lead funnel that, you get a bunch of emails and contact form, and here's your 3 packages. And, it's beer wine, signature cocktails, beer, wine, full bar. Like that puts you in a sea of sameness, right? And so what's next for mobile bars? And that's what we're focusing on in our content now. So it's an ever evolving, always expanding, always aiming to serve the problems at hand type of environment, which I think makes us different than a lot of the other programs and options that are on the market for mobile bar owners.
Yeah, it's really common for us to get feedback weekly in our Hello at mailbox, people who have secured high-end events they never thought possible, people who have finally nailed down their pricing and packaging, they're finally making profit. The number of times a week I hear, "Sarah, you're such a saint." People love what you do in the industry. So you had a really good run with Bar Magnolia. She was very successful. She's still very successful. And eventually, you made a decision to pivot out of the doing of the mobile bar scene and go all in on the education side of this industry. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you made that decision? What prompted that decision for you?
Yes, I love this question. I oftentimes get this question from clients. I actually got it maybe 2 weeks ago from a group coaching client that was like, Sarah, why did you sell your mobile bar if you're so good at this, right? Which is a fair question. And it was actually one of the fears that I had around selling. If you remember, I got to this point, it was shortly after COVID had subsided enough to open the events industry back up. And mind you, we had been mostly closed for about an entire year or 2 seasons worth for Bar Magnolia. And so during that time, I had to really lean into Mobile Bev Pros more so than Bar Magnolia for a couple of reasons. One, it was still a viable revenue stream. And two, because people needed me there. And I had opened up both one-on-one coaching and group coaching containers. And I just want to share, like, before that, coaching was not something that I did. I was an educator. I kind of saw people as like I was a mentor or I was community leader. These are the titles that I gave myself. But then during COVID, people were really like, Sarah, I need your help. I don't know how to, survive this. And I have 2 advanced business degrees. I'm a problem solver by nature, a strategist. And so I was like, if this is what's needed of me, and I don't have my own business at the moment other than Mobile Bev Pros, then I can really lean in here. And so I worked with a couple of clients. I'm really proud of what happened because it was my first real coaching opportunity. And both of those clients, I was able to get their businesses through the pandemic actually making more money than they were making prior, which is wild. Both of them had a virtual cocktail class component, both of which ended up with cocktail kits, and then one of which started pivoting into brand activations. And she recently closed a $500,000 deal. There's like one contract, $500,000. And that all kind of came out of the pandemic. So pretty proud of the direction that the pandemic took. But one of the other things that it took was a lot of time and energy and effort on my part. And so when the events scene opened back up and Bar Magnolia had its biggest sales year up to that point, within 6 months, it went from having I don't know, I think we did like $15,000-$20,000 in revenue during the pandemic. And then like we hit over $200,000 in revenue for that next year. And we were only open for about 9 months of it. So boom, right? We went from doing nothing to so much. And I also had Mobile Bev Pros that I had paying clients that were really relying on me. And I'll never forget the day that we had our coaching call, because at the time you were my coach. And I just bawled into the camera. I couldn't even get out of bed. I was struggling with back pain so much. And I realized at that time something needed to give. And you asked at that time, well, what's going to give? And it was not hard for me to say Bar Magnolia. And the reason being is that one of the things that really drives a lot of my decision making in life is impact. Where can I make the most amount of impact? And hosting events was great. It's good fun. Bar Magnolia was making way more money than Mobile Bev Pros at the time. And so that one seemed like the no-brainer to keep Bar Magnolia because it was making more money. But reality was that the impact that I make through Mobile Bev Pros is infinitely more. I'm not just serving drinks for weddings and corporate events and that sort of thing. I'm changing lives. I'm helping people build wealth. I'm making dreams come true, which sounds really silly, but so many people that hire us or invest in our programs, they have a dream, and that's to work for themselves and financial freedom and time freedom. And we know that's possible for them. And if it came down to me saying, yes, I want to have a business where people have solid drinks and service at events, or I have a business where I help people build financial freedom and time freedom for themselves through entrepreneurship, like it was a no-brainer. And so it felt like the right choice for me to sell Bar Magnolia, which was the right choice. The couple who bought it have continued to gain traction. It's only gotten more successful. And I still see all their 5-star reviews. Was texting the other day that they have plans to add additional rigs, which is all great. So like, I know that I built something solid and that it continues to work, even though I'm not working it, which I'm really honored to have done. And that's one, right, of the many businesses that I've been able to support. And so that's why I ended up selling Bar Magnolia.
I'll never forget that day. Your little nightie that you were wearing had lemons on it. And so I always remember that day as the day that life gave you lemons and that you made lemonade. And it was actually a pretty easy rollout for you. Aligned decisions kind of work that way, right? You were able to pretty easily move forward with the process of offboarding and selling Bar Magnolia for a delicious profit, which is what we want for people who come to the end of their mobile bar journey. And in this course of time, from 2016, right?
Mm-hmm.
To now, holy shit, Sarah, that's like almost 10 years you've been in this industry. You are an OG. You've learned a thing or two, and there are some common themes we see that come up again and again and again. And because you love to give people tangible takeaways in these podcasts, you were going to share some of those. So you wrote down some of the most common themes that you see in the industry. Would you like to just start with the list?
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of figure out like what could we offer in this 5-year anniversary podcast that's of value. And the thing that kept coming up was like, why don't you talk about all the things that you talk about, but like in one podcast? Because we say a lot of the same things. And so we're not going to go too deep in any of these things, but like just rest assured that if I say a thing here, we've gone deep in it already. Because these are the things that we say to people all the time, because these are either common misconceptions that people have in the industry. And I'm not talking about like, do you need a liquor license? Like those things are all administrative. They're all very easy to research, even though a lot of people feel like they don't understand the responses that they get. We have so many resources out there that kind of talk about insurance and laws and that sort of thing. And so we're not going to talk about those, but I do want to go through just a little bit of a list of things that we see frequently that we've collected over the years that would be helpful and beneficial for people to keep in mind. So the first one, you don't need a rig. We have an entire episode on that. A lot of times the rigs are what attract people to this industry because they're pretty. They are unique, they are experiential, but they're also really expensive, and they continue to get more and more expensive. And yes, you can DIY it yourself. Learning curves there are really high oftentimes, even if you're a contractor building something to go hurricane wind speeds down the road is different than building a house that just kind of sits on its foundation. So there's like learning that has to be had. And so my suggestion is that you don't need a rig to get started. If you have one, great. You don't need it. The second thing is that you should be spending at least 50% of your time in the first 2 years focused solely on visibility. That's marketing, that's networking, that's cold outreach, that's social media, that's you name it, putting a sticker on your car that says, mobile bar, here's my number. Like you want the most amount of eyes on you as possible. And if you're going to get the most return on investment for your time, money, energy, resources, all those things, focus on networking, in-person networking. We say it a lot. You can't say it too much. And mainly because when we get people into our containers and we prescribe networking, without fail, they start to see results, big results, and they come back and they say, I don't know why I had such resistance around this. Why is it taking me so long to do networking? It has been amazing for my business. And especially when you network with your amplifiers, and your amplifiers are anybody who have access to your ideal clients, and lots of them. So that usually looks like event planners, caterers, that sort of thing. Again, you've probably heard me say this a million times, but it would not have been right to make this list without including that little tidbit. The second part of that, when it comes to visibility, is that social media is the visibility strategy with the lowest return on investment. Some people like to fight me on this. I really don't care. Social media for local-based businesses in this industry has the lowest return on investment. It's not that it's not functional, that it won't work, that it doesn't produce results. It's just that if you spent the same amount of time and energy on networking or cold outreach or literally anything else than social media, you would get a higher return on your investment. So do you need social media? Yes. Will it be the thing that drives the most amount of sales? If it is the thing that's driving the most amount of sales for you, then it's probably because you don't have a strong networking game or cold outreach game. The next thing, and I actually don't know that I say this very often, but it is something that I teach through my recommendations on having a nurture program. Just because you've offboarded someone from your events doesn't mean they should be dead to you. Like, you should continue to nurture that contact as either an amplifier, someone who can give you referrals, as someone who could be a future client. And that's because it's easier to get repeat clients than new clients. So the next thing that I wrote down here is that there is no such thing as a saturated market, only seas of sameness. And we did a podcast on this not too long ago. It's a few episodes ago about the sea of sameness. And the themes that we're starting to see is like, there's more saturation in my market. There's more competitors than ever. And the thing that we like to say to that is that there's no such thing as competition if you are unique. If you are just like that other person with the same offerings and the same looking bars and the same messaging that we elevate bar experiences or whatever it is, right? Then yes, you will succumb to the competition because you look just like them in everything but pricing. So now we're competing on pricing. However, if you really dial in what your differentiation is from everyone else on the market, then you don't compete with anyone. And so we stick by that. Go deep, don't go wide, don't try and be at every single event. Yes, you can offer bar and lemonade and coffee and all of those things, which is great, but that's not your differentiator. How do you do bar and coffee and lemonade versus everyone else? Why you? Why your lemonade? And it's not necessarily, it's almost always never, oh, well, we fresh squeeze, because then someone else just needs to fresh squeeze and now they're competing with you, right? It's got to be something else. You got to get to the essence of what you offer that other people don't. Which brings me to the next thing. And we still don't see a whole lot of takers on this concept until we get them in our group coaching programs. Mindset is everything. I had this conversation with someone once who said she was a successful business owner and she had mentioned something about mindset. I was like, yeah, I just wish I could get people that are just starting their business to understand how important mindset is. She goes, oh, I hated everything that had to do with mindset until I achieved a certain level of success and realized that I could have gotten there so much faster with the right mindset. She's like, in this case, hindsight was everything to me because mindset meant nothing to me until I realized it was the one thing that was holding me back from success. And so I just want everyone here to know mindset is everything from the very beginning. Even if you're like, I hate mindset stuff. Paul always comes to mind. Paul, if you're listening to this, I'm calling you out because he's always like, you know how I don't like that mindset stuff. Like, I know, Paul, you don't like the mindset stuff. And still, it's everything.
I'll second that gospel. Amen.
Amen. And the last one that I have here, and maybe there's more that came up for you. The last one that I have here is that mobile bars are most likely to succeed. And by succeed, I mean hit more than 5 years in business. if they hit $100,000 in revenue within the first 18 to 24 months. If you're full-time in your business and you're not part-time, then that number really needs to be 12 to 18 months. But if you are part-time, like I was part-time in my business for 18 months before I went full-time, you really need to be at $100,000 in top line revenue. 115 is the more specific number, with 50% profit margins. You really have to be at that number within the first 18 to 24 months if you're going to quote unquote succeed. And I say that because what we see is that if people don't hit that number within the first 18 to 24 months, they can't really afford to keep it afloat. They've spent 2 years kind of subsidizing this business, and it needs to pay for itself. Otherwise, it just becomes a better idea for them to sell it for parts or just close it down. So that's the other thing that I think is important for people to know, is that if you can hit the ground running and you can get good numbers really quickly in this business, it will drastically improve your chances of building a successful business that will pay you a salary. And then when you're ready to sell, will have value.
That was the first thing on my list that I hadn't heard you cover just yet. But then I had two others. The first one is pricing versus positioning. We see a lot of times people come in and they think they want help with their pricing because they think that it's too high. People are responding to their emails and saying, your price is too high, this competitor is lower, et cetera, et cetera. And it's never your pricing. In fact, your prices are probably too low right now. If you're listening to this, your prices are probably too low. All of you, even the people who have raised your prices, are probably too low. It's always a matter of positioning. And you're going to teach a phenomenal workshop on this in May. Those seats are all sold out for the Sexy Selling Workshop. And people are coming in to learn about how to position themselves, how to create an exquisite client experience that really speaks to their pricing so that they are attracting people who price is less of an issue with, right? And so when you're trying to attract just anybody, your mama's cousins, uncles, aunties, you're going to get pushback about your pricing. They're going to want you to do them a solid. You know what I mean? Whereas when you get into the luxury, ultra premium, premium markets, you're going to have people who value ease over dollars saved. I'm one of those people. I will always pay extra for convenience in every aspect of my life. And so pricing versus positioning, I thought was really important to mention because we harp on that. We see it all the time. You teach it all the time. We talk about it all the time. And then the other one that came up for me was, when do I take my bar full time? This is for the people who are full time in their business. And they're like, when is the right time? Because usually your mobile bar can't hit that multi six figure or six figure mark if you are not full time in it, but you can't leave your six figure job to be full time in the mobile bar. And so could you touch on that? Because I've heard you put it beautifully before. And I think for the listeners, it'd be really valuable.
Yes, absolutely. I also love that you talked about positioning over pricing, and why I'm so excited for that particular workshop is that the main difference between positioning yourself for one market to the other is mostly mindset, but we call it psychology. We call it psychology when we're talking about that. We're talking about buyer psychology. And it sounds a lot like, manipulation, but what it is, framing and using the science of the brain and understanding what people value, and tiny little shifts that we can implement into the buying process that make people feel seen, heard, and supported in a way that makes you absolutely irresistible. And that has nothing to do with pricing, except for that people will pay more for it. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. And then as for the second thing, when it comes to like when to leave your job, this really comes down to momentum. Usually there's this point where you got to ask yourself, if I was spending, and we'll say use 40 hours, let's just say you have a full-time job. You've got momentum in your own business, your mobile bar business, you're getting leads, you're converting leads pretty regularly. Like, that's an important thing to mention here, is because it's not necessarily having an offer. It's, is your offer proven? And by that, can you prove with evidence in your field that people are willing to pay what you want and need to charge in order to make this thing a full-time gig for you? Have you demonstrated and proven that people will pay those rates? And so if, for example, you left your job and you were, before, your minimum was like $1,000, and you're like, if I leave my job, I actually need my rates to be $1,800 an event in order for me to pay myself. If you can't prove that people will pay consistently that $1,800, then you aren't really ready to leave your job yet. And so if you're looking for a tangible proof that you can leave your job, you first need to prove that the offer you are selling is something that your market, your ideal client, those that are already resonating with your message, are paying those rates. So once you have proof of your offer, then the next thing becomes, what additional momentum could you build in your business if you took those same 40 hours that you're using to make your boss rich to focus on your business? And the issue that we typically find with that transition, I'll be 100% transparent with all the listeners here. What we find the biggest struggle is when people leave their day jobs to go full-time in their business, they immediately get hamstrung by their own inability to focus. They're so used to having a structure in place, a boss that they're accountable to, all of these systems in place to ensure that they're being productive and working on the right things. And now they're their own boss. And suddenly they're like, I don't know what to focus on. I don't know where to spend my time. I feel very discombobulated. I'm very disorganized. I'm all over the place. Where should I be spending my time? And so they get on that analysis paralysis rocking horse. And so they don't show up for their own business the way that they showed up for that other business. My biggest cautionary tale here is that if you look at yourself and you're like, I would love to leave my day job and I would love to work full time in my business. I have momentum in my business. I have proof that people are paying what I need to make in order to make this a full time thing. And you're ready to take that jump into being a full time entrepreneur. You need to learn how to be accountable to yourself. You need to learn how to create systems that work for you, organize your time, prioritize your tasks in a way that is going to move your business forward. If you can do those things and you already have momentum, then it's a no-brainer. You should absolutely be spending 40 hours a week working to make yourself rich versus your boss rich. But you don't have anyone telling you what to do anymore. So you have to be accountable to the work that's going to move the needle.
This has been the absolute gospel. This will land on Wednesday. We will be running the lifetime membership option this Friday, April the 12th, for 24 hours only. Absolutely anybody can get in for a lifetime into the academy to learn more about each and every one of these topics for only $9.99 for the entire, well, for life.
Yeah, it's like a $1,400 savings, which is it's a celebration, but it's only for 24 hours. And so if you have ever wanted to be in the academy, or if you're in the academy and you just want to save a bunch of money on your future tuition and you want to upgrade to the lifetime, then not only do you continue to get access to everything that's already in the academy, you will forever get access to everything that's ever added to the academy. You'll also get ongoing, like forever, discounts on one-on-one strategy meetings, meaning, 3 years from now, you decide you want to sell your mobile bar and you want to have a meeting with me to figure out how best to set your business up for sale. 50% off the call, even if you haven't logged into the academy in 3 years. Although we have many people that have been in the academy for 4 or 5 years and they still actively utilize the content that's in there. You'll also continue to get 15% off all in-person tickets. So if you are an academy member and you want to do a workshop like we're doing in Nashville, or you want to come to Puerto Rico for the conference that we're having there in January, you get 15% off forever on all live events. It's really a no-brainer for people who want to succeed in this industry. Again, it's a proven program. It's been around for 5 years now, and it's always getting better. It's not something that we let, get stale or stagnant. It is constantly evolving to be better with fresh content. We like to say that all roads lead to the academy, meaning that if you have access to the academy, you at least have the foundational information you need to build a successful 6- and 7-figure mobile bar business. If you need additional support, that's where the accelerator comes in. But the academy, it's produced more 6-figure mobile bar businesses than any other program in the world. And so we're pretty proud of it. Now people are going to have access to it at an all-time low.
How exciting. Another awesome episode. And guys, we'll talk to you next week.
And that wraps up today's episode. I hope it was valuable. I would love to hear from you what you thought. You can drop me a line at hello@mobilebevpros.com or find me on Instagram at mobilebevpros. If you're looking for more valuable mobile bar related content, we have a website full of it. You can find us at www.mobilebevpros.com. And I'd love to see you in our Facebook community, also by the name of, you guessed it, Mobile Bev Pros. Thank you for joining me today, and until next time, cheers.